India's former ambassador to France joins us now. He's Jawed Ashraf. Jawed, thank you very much for being with us here in France 24. We appreciate your time. You've got space to give us your side of the story. But can I start by asking you, please, sir, what will it take to talk these two down, India, Pakistan? It seems the tension is going higher and higher.
I think first of all, thank you for having me. It's late in the evening over here. First of all, I think before we get down to the focus on tamping down tensions, there needs to be a clear recognition of what happened on April 22nd. It wasn't just an act of terrorism or linked to the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, as your narrative points out. There were tourists from rest of India that were there. They were singled out for their religion in the most crude manner. The male members were shot dead in front of their families and friends. 26 people lost their lives. We had clear indication, intercepts, evidence that they were in contact with their handlers in Pakistan. And I mean, it's a story which everybody in the world knows. The UN has prescribed so many of the Pakistani-based organizations, LET, Jaish-e-Mohammed, almost in France, United States, all the countries recognize the existence of these terrorist groups inside Pakistan. Many had links, incidentally, to terror attacks that have taken place in Europe. So let's first get the narrative clear about what happened and what was the cause and what was the trigger. For 2 weeks, we have been waiting for Pakistan to either take steps in response to these attacks, but instead we had obfuscation, denials, accusations of false flag operations. And so, as the Prime Minister had clearly stated, that the perpetrators will be brought to justice, the backers will be brought to justice. We've gone ahead and done that. Just as, you and France have carried out your military strikes thousands of kilometers away in Sahel for more than a decade in pursuit of your security and in revenge for terrorist attacks that have taken place in your country, we have just done that. That is, we have targeted 9 sites. By the way, 2 of them, Bahawalpur and Muridke, are headquarters of 2 UN-proscribed organizations. And if your ambassador for Pakistan says there were civilian targets, let me tell you that the leader of JEM, Jaish-e-Mohammed, has himself said that 10 members of his family have been killed. So it was really something that was targeted specifically at the terrorist camps. We were very particular, incidentally, not to target civilians and not to hit military targets at all. And in fact, we used precision-guided munitions so that there was no accidental collateral damage. So that's where it is. We've seen a response from Pakistan. We have no intentions of escalating it. We've achieved our objectives in terms of bringing the perpetrators of those dastardly attacks to justice. And it is now, if Pakistan wants to further escalate the situation, which we hope it won't, given its economic fragility and its political instability and low staying power, it will obviously be targeting civilian or military targets in India, either through conventional means or another act of terror. Then it will have to face full-scale retaliation, military retaliation from India. And I think we are very clear that we will prevail and we will dominate the entire escalation.
Mr. Ashraf, you've been extremely clear. You've been extremely clear, and we appreciate that clarity. And you've pointed out exactly what happened from your perspective. Can I put it to you that 31 people are dead? People. Now, what their involvement was, we don't know. I don't know. You think you're sure on what their involvement was, but 31 people are dead. Should India have had a different kind of response? Should India have been bigger than that and sort of shown a better example about how to peacefully somehow resolve the situation?
You perhaps are not aware of the history of 4 decades of terrorism that has been sponsored by Pakistan. Now, India is not the only country that talks about Pakistan-based terrorism. You've had that problem emanating from Pakistan. United States has had it. Others have had it. We faced it for 4 decades as an instrument of Pakistan's military subconventional warfare, low-intensity conflict against India for an unattainable objective. Now, there have been a regular pattern of attacks. But I want to emphasize, if you look at the Kargil war in 1999, you look at the parliament attack in 2001, you look at the Mumbai attack in 2008, you look at 3 attacks in Pathankot, in Uri, and then Pulwama, all in the last decade. These were really major attacks, and they drew a response. Now, the problem that we face is that we do not see any effort on the part, in fact, to the contrary, continuing support, abetment to terrorist attacks in India for objectives that you can ask Pakistanis why they do it. But for us, it is very clear they want to continue to destroy the peace and progress that is taking place in Jammu and Kashmir. They want to polarize the society in India. They want to continue to try and inflict damage on India. I don't think, and the military wants to use this in Pakistan to shore up its eroding credibility, because then it's seen as a guarantor of Pakistan's security. Its internal challenges become a source of a problem for us. So I think there was no other way but to attack it. We have, of course, waited for Pakistan. I can tell you that we have in 2016, January, after Prime Minister Narendra Modi made this historic visit to Lahore. 1 week later, we had an attack at Pathankot Air Base. We took the unprecedented step of inviting Pakistan to come and jointly investigate that attack. The response was complete denial of the involvement when we had the people who had actually conducted the attack saying that they had everything coming from Pakistan. That shows that there is no other way than to practice deterrence. Now you tell me one country in the world, including yours, which has not responded to terrorism, sometimes thousands of kilometers away, through use of force in order to deter future attack, in order to bring the perpetrators to justice. And there is a public sentiment that had to be assuaged after what was such an act of inciting religious polarization and religious conflict in India. So there was no other way. We are, of course, as I've told you, number of occasions, for those who actually study the history and not read one paragraph in the media narrative, know that we have made serious efforts. This prime minister with whom I worked, the previous prime minister with whom I worked, had made persistent efforts to try and secure peace with Pakistan.
Mr. Abbas, is that one of the issues? It goes back to partition, it goes back to 1947. There's been, as you've pointed out, so many incidents of war and attacks that have happened and have been, obviously there's been revenge that has taken place. You're saying there's no other alternative. But I'm wondering, as part of what has happened recently, 2 mosques were hit, Muzaffarabad and Kotli. Is that India going too far?
To mosque with, do you know, and if I think that you need to have your own intelligence agencies point out to you how these mosques, how these madrasas are actually training grounds, motivational centers, recruitment, people being recruited and motivated to conduct jihad against India. So many of these masquerade as mosques. We have been collecting evidence for the last 40 years and presenting them to the world. You can ask your own government, maybe they can speak to you in confidence. We have presented, we had Pakistan on the grey list, then they took steps. Now, all of you remember the Mumbai terror attack that took place in 2008. 166 people from different nationalities lost their lives. What action did Pakistan take after that? Nothing at all. And therefore, if you see all the countries, if they don't find that those who are supporters, harborers of terrorism, take action to eliminate it, they take the matter in their own hand. You've seen that all the time. Why do you talk to me with a certain different set of standards that apply to India and Pakistan and what applies to Europe or what applies to the United States? They're completely the same. We actually face a nuclear-armed, a major military power supporting terrorism against India as a low-cost, subconventional way of keeping this conflict alive. We have no interest in persisting with conflict with Pakistan. And we have said that repeatedly. If you stop supporting, abetting cross-border terrorism against India, if you're interested in a relationship, peaceful relationship with us, and if you assure us that you are not complicit in terrorism emanating from your country. We will go the extra mile to make peace with you. Several prime ministers have gone down that path and gone down that path unsuccessfully. So
So
we
if
are
they
at a very
cannot do that,
difficult
Mr.
moment.
Ambassador, if Pakistan cannot convince you of that, I think I heard you saying that you're
Of
willing to
what?
actually go further. You're willing to actually sort of accelerate the situation to actually attack.
No, if we see, we've been facing this problem for decades, as I've just repeated to you. We've had a series of attacks. We have been very restrained in our responses so far. We've expected also the international community to make Pakistan pay a price for sponsoring terrorism the way you make some other countries pay a price for being state sponsors of terrorism. We haven't seen the same set of resolute international action against Pakistan. We've not seen Pakistan taking any steps. The level of terrorist attacks in India, and particularly in Jammu and Kashmir, which has seen good elections, which has seen progress and prosperity, a newly elected government in place, record levels of tourism there, coming under a renewed attack. What are we expected to do when we see absolutely no effort on part of Pakistan to change its course? In fact, to the contrary, continue. Just few days before the attack, I mean, Pakistan's chief of army, who's the de facto ruler of the country, you don't have your CDS and our chief of our CDS speaking the way their army chiefs speak. Talk about our two countries being completely different people with different religions, that country was born, was the first Islamic state, and that the saying that Kashmir is in our jugular vein and we'll fight India to its end. I mean, what kind of a statement do you have to make for an army chief to do that, to incite people? And few days later, you have exactly what we anticipated would happen in Pahalgam. And that's the tragedy of the situation. You have the army chief inciting terrorism, and actually terrorism along religious lines.
Kashmir
So
is at the
the
centre
point I'm making.
Kashmir is at the centre of the issue, isn't it, Mr. Ambassador? That's what everyone
Kashmir
sees.
is not the center of the issue.
Why do you say
This
that?
is a mistake that everyone makes. You have had the former presidents of Pakistan repeatedly saying that even if this issue of Jammu and Kashmir is resolved, we will continue to bleed India by 1,000 cuts. Now, why do people ignore this kind of a statement that comes out of the mouth of a Pakistani president who has worn a uniform and been a Pakistan army chief? That just shows that the raison d'etre for Pakistan seems to be hostility towards India. That seems to be the only identity that it has. And I think it can be made to change its course if the international community called a spade and said that, well, you need to change course, otherwise you will continue to face the sanctions. That countries with lesser track record of terrorism face from Europe and the United States. I mean, countries that I think we think have a better track record suffer much more. So do not expect us to accept dual standards of treating countries that sponsor, harbor terrorism. That's one part of the thing. If you did something, maybe there will be disincentives for them to continue with their practice of terrorism against India. So if you make that step, if they take a concrete step, and if these unnecessary attacks, if this is senseless violence against India ceases, I do not see why the two countries, why we will not go ahead and advance a relationship of peace with India. I mean, and I say this because I worked closely with two prime ministers, and I know both of them, including the current one, started off by trying to make peace with Pakistan. He made this historic visit to Lahore at a very short notice at the invitation of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. We have had back-channel discussions for years together. But that does not solve the problem. There was a time when we were willing to supply electric power to Pakistan when it had shortage. But it is their military and it is their intelligence agencies which cut that out, which thwarted that. So every overture of peace is met by an act of terror which stops that process. So someone needs to wake up and stop equating the victim and the accuser and the aggressor, as we sometimes face on by the so-called objective, rational, international audience. And I can see that when I was in Paris, I could see the anguish and angst of people with regard to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and you could not understand why people were in some sense taking a kind of a position of equality between the two countries, because you were at the epicenter, you felt it, and people outside couldn't. So I can sometimes rationalize and understand why we
Mr.
see that
Ambassador,
kind of a response.
I need to cut you off, Dan. I'm very sorry to do so because you're making many salient points, and I'll remind you that we spoke about trade when I was at an event, the Franco-Indian trade event, when you were there hosting it, and thank you for your hospitality on that.
Yes.
And thank you for joining us here to discuss a very different situation, a very different topic.
We look forward to this conversation, because France has been a very in the UN Security Council, and we would like to express our appreciation for the manner in which they conveyed solidarity and support to us in the discussions on the recent terrorist attack in UN Security Council.
Jawed Ashraf, thank you very much indeed for joining us here in France 24. We appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you.